When Captain Zara Voss stepped onto the neutral trading station orbiting the dead world of Kepler 442b, she expected another routine diplomatic mission. What she didn't expect was to witness the systematic humiliation of humanity's greatest mechanic by an arrogant hegemony pilot who believed humans were nothing more than clever pets. The galaxy had accepted humanity into the Galactic Council 3 years ago, but acceptance and respect were two very different things. Most alien species saw humans as useful, good at fixing things, decent at following orders, but lacking the sophisticated technology and evolutionary advantages that made the other races truly powerful. That was about to change forever, because sometimes the most dangerous thing in the universe isn't the biggest weapon or the fastest ship. It's underestimating the species that turn their entire planet into a weapon just to survive, and who see every impossible problem as just another Tuesday. The hegemony was about to learn why you never, ever mess with a human's tools or their friends. The docking bay of Nexus Station hummed with activity as Captain Zara Voss guided her diplomatic shuttle through the massive entrance. Through the viewport, she watched dozens of alien vessels of every conceivable design floating in organized chaos. Sleek Valerian cruisers with their distinctive curved hulls sat beside the geometric perfection of crystalline ships, while the organic curves of Zephyrian bio-vessels pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Zara had visited Nexus Station a dozen times in her 3 years as humanity's primary diplomatic representative, but the sight never failed to impress her. The station itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering, built by 7 different species working together. It served as neutral ground where the various races of the Galactic Council could meet, trade, and resolve disputes without the political complications of visiting each other's homeworlds. Today's mission was routine by galactic standards, but crucial for humanity. The hegemony, a powerful alliance of 4 technologically advanced species, had finally agreed to consider human applications for advanced shipbuilding contracts. For a species that had only achieved faster-than-light travel 15 years ago, this represented a massive step forward in galactic standing. Zara's shuttle settled into the designated docking bay with a soft thud. She ran through her mental checklist as the docking clamps engaged and the airlock cycled. The hegemony representatives would be expecting her in Conference Bay 7 in 30 minutes. She had just enough time to check on the human maintenance crew that had been working on the station for the past month. The crew, led by Chief Mechanic Marcus Chun, had been brought in to upgrade some of the station's older systems. It was exactly the kind of unglamorous but essential work that humans had become known for throughout the galaxy. While other species focused on advancing their already impressive technologies, humans seemed content to fix, improve, and maintain the infrastructure that kept galactic civilization running. Zara stepped out of her shuttle and immediately felt the familiar artificial gravity and recycled air of the station. The docking bay stretched out before her, easily the size of several football fields. Maintenance crews of various species moved efficiently between the ships, performing routine checks and refueling operations. She spotted the human section immediately. Unlike the other areas where alien crews used advanced automated systems and hovering drone assistance, the human area looked like organized chaos. Toolkits lay open beside partially disassembled equipment. Marcus Chun was on his back underneath what looked like a power distribution node, only his legs visible, while his assistant Sarah Kim sat cross-legged beside him, holding various tools and consulting a tablet covered in handwritten notes. The scene made Zara smile. Other species often commented on humanity's primitive approach to technology, but somehow they consistently delivered results that impressed even the most advanced civilizations. There was something about human intuition and problem-solving that couldn't be replicated by even the most sophisticated artificial intelligence. As she approached, Zara heard Marcus's voice from underneath the node, slightly muffled but clearly frustrated. "Sarah, hand me the torque wrench. The 12 mm, not the 15. This coupling is fighting me like it's got a personal grudge." Sarah rolled her eyes and passed him the requested tool. Maybe because you've been arguing with it for 2 hours, Chief. You know what they say about mechanical empathy. Mechanical empathy is real, Marcus replied, his voice strained with effort. Every piece of equipment has a personality. This one just happens to be particularly stubborn. Zara was about to announce her presence when she heard heavy footsteps approaching from behind. She turned to see 3 figures walking toward the human work area with the kind of purposeful stride that usually meant trouble. The lead figure was unmistakably Hegemony, standing nearly 8 feet tall, with a characteristic blue-gray skin and forearms of the Zinthari race. He wore the pristine white uniform of a Hegemony fleet pilot. His insignia marked him as a commander, equivalent to Zara's own rank, but carrying significantly more prestige in galactic society. Behind him walked 2 other Hegemony officers, one from the insectoid Clixardi race and another Zenthari. Commander Thexanel approached the human work area with the casual arrogance that Zara had learned to associate with certain Hegemony officers. His 4 eyes surveyed the scattered tools and equipment with obvious disdain. Human mechanics, he said loudly enough for everyone in the area to hear, his voice carrying the distinctive harmonic undertones of translated Zenthari speech. Is this the primitive chaos we are supposed to trust with our advanced systems? Marcus's legs stopped moving. Sarah looked up from her tablet, her expression immediately shifting from casual concentration to professional wariness. The other species working in nearby areas began to slow their activities, sensing potential conflict. Zara felt her diplomatic instincts kicking in. This was exactly the kind of situation that could derail the delicate negotiations she was here to conduct. She started to step forward, but something made her pause. There was a quality to the silence that suggested this moment was more significant than it appeared. Marcus slid out from under the power node with deliberate calm. As he sat up and turned to face the Hegemony officers, Zara saw the expression she had learned to recognize in veteran mechanics. It was the look of someone who had spent years solving impossible problems and wasn't particularly impressed by anyone who hadn't done the same. Marcus was in his late 40s, with graying hair and the kind of weathered hands that came from decades of working with machinery. His uniform bore the insignia of the Terran Engineering Corps, along with service ribbons that Zara knew represented tours on dozens of worlds throughout human space. He looked at Commander Thexanael with the patient expression of someone waiting for a point to be made. "Something I can help you with, Commander?" Marcus asked, wiping his hands on a rag. Commander Thexanael gestured dismissively at the work area. "I am conducting an inspection of this station's maintenance operations. What I see here concerns me greatly. How can the Council expect proper maintenance when the workers cannot even organize their primitive tools properly?" Sarah started to stand, her face flushing with anger, but Marcus held up a hand without looking at her. His eyes remained fixed on the Hegemony officer. "These tools," Marcus said calmly, "have been organized according to optimal workflow efficiency. Every item is exactly where it needs to be for the specific task being performed. Would you like me to explain the reasoning behind the arrangement?" "Reasoning?" Commander Thexanael's voice carried amusement that didn't quite hide his contempt. "Human, your species has barely mastered basic metallurgy. What could you possibly understand about the sophisticated systems that keep this station operational?" The docking bay had grown noticeably quieter. Even the automated systems seemed to hum more softly as various alien crews stopped to observe the confrontation. Zara recognized the dangerous moment that was developing. In galactic society, public challenges to competence were serious matters. How Marcus responded would affect not just his own reputation, but humanity's standing in the eyes of every alien watching. Marcus stood slowly, setting down his rag with the same deliberate care with which he had approached everything else. When he spoke, his voice carried the quiet confidence of absolute certainty. "Commander, I've been working on systems like these since before your species achieved interstellar flight. The power distribution node I just finished upgrading will now operate at 97% efficiency instead of the previous 81%. The improvements I've made will extend its operational lifespan by approximately 400 years and reduce power fluctuations throughout this section of the station by 60%. He gestured toward the apparently chaotic arrangement of tools. Every tool here is positioned according to a system developed over centuries of human engineering practice. It prioritizes speed, accuracy, and safety in a way that your species' automated systems, for all their sophistication, cannot match. Commander Thexenael's expression shifted to something approaching amusement. Fascinating claims from someone using equipment that my ancestors would have considered primitive. Perhaps you would be willing to demonstrate this supposed superiority. The challenge hung in the air like an electric charge. Zara felt her stomach tighten as she realized the implications. This was no longer a simple misunderstanding between maintenance crews. Commander Thexenael was officially challenging human competence in front of representatives from multiple alien species. Depending on how this played out, it could either strengthen humanity's position in the upcoming negotiations or destroy it completely. Marcus glanced around the docking bay, clearly aware of the audience they had attracted. When his eyes met Zara's across the distance, she saw a flicker of recognition, but no request for intervention. He looked back at Commander Thexenael and nodded slowly. "What did you have in mind, Commander?" Thexenael's forearms gestured toward a section of the docking bay where several ships sat in various states of maintenance. The Hegemony Survey vessel Radiance of Truth has been experiencing intermittent power fluctuations in its primary sensor array. My crew has been unable to identify the source of the problem despite using the most advanced diagnostic systems available. He pointed one of his lower arms toward Marcus. "If human engineering is truly superior, perhaps you can succeed where hegemony technology has failed." The implications were staggering. The Radiance of Truth was a cutting-edge hegemony vessel, incorporating technology that was generations ahead of anything humanity had developed. Its sensor systems alone probably cost more than entire human space stations. For Marcus to even touch such equipment without proper authorization could create a diplomatic incident. But Zara also recognized the opportunity. If Marcus could actually solve a problem that had stumped hegemony engineers, it would demonstrate human capabilities in a way that no amount of diplomatic discussion could achieve. Marcus looked at Sarah, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Then he looked back at Commander Thexenael. "I'll need unrestricted access to the ship's systems and a guarantee that any modifications I make will be evaluated fairly by neutral parties." "Agreed," Thexenael replied immediately. "But when you fail, as you inevitably will, I expect a public acknowledgement that human maintenance capabilities are inadequate for advanced Galactic Council operations." The stakes had just been raised dramatically. Zara felt her diplomatic training warring with her protective instincts. She should intervene, find a way to de-escalate the situation before it spiraled completely out of control. But she also knew Marcus Chen's reputation. If any human could rise to this challenge, it was him. Marcus extended his hand in the traditional human gesture of agreement. Commander Thexenael looked at the offered hand for a moment, then reached out with one of his upper arms to grasp it briefly. "Sarah," Marcus said without turning around, "pack the full diagnostic kit and bring the emergency coffee." As Sarah began gathering equipment with practiced efficiency, Zara noticed something interesting. The other alien crews had stopped pretending to work and were now openly watching the proceedings. Word was spreading through the docking bay with the speed that news always traveled in closed communities. Within minutes, representatives from half a dozen species had found reasons to be in the area. The Valerian trade delegation had emerged from their ship to observe. A group of crystalline technicians had arranged themselves in their characteristic geometric pattern near the Radiance of Truth. Even normally reclusive voidwalkers had sent a representative. What had started as a simple confrontation between mechanic and a pilot was rapidly becoming a public test of human capabilities in front of the most influential species in the galaxy. Marcus seemed completely oblivious to the gathering crowd. He methodically checked his toolkit made a few notes on a worn tablet, and consulted quietly with Sarah about diagnostic procedures. His calm demeanor stood in stark contrast to the nervous energy radiating from the alien observers. Commander Thexanel led the way toward the radiance of truth, his 3 companion officers falling into formation behind him. The ship itself was a work of art, its hull flowing in impossible curves that seemed to bend light around them. Access ports opened silently as they approached, revealing an interior that glowed with soft, organic-looking illumination. As they reached the ship's entrance, Thexanael turned back to Marcus with an expression that mixed curiosity with condescension. One final question, human. What makes you believe you can succeed where the finest minds in the hegemony have failed? Marcus paused at the entrance ramp and looked back at the crowd that had gathered to watch. His eyes found Zara again, and this time she saw something in his expression that made her suddenly confident in humanity's chances. Commander, Marcus said quietly, we humans have a saying. We don't know what can be done. As they entered the ship, Zara realized that everything was about to change. One way or another, this moment would be remembered as the day humanity either proved itself worthy of respect among the stars, or confirmed every assumption about human limitations that the galaxy had ever held. The test was about to begin, and with it, humanity's future among the stars hung in the balance. The interior of the radiance of truth was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. The corridors curved in ways that seemed to defy 3-dimensional geometry, and the walls pulsed with a soft, living light that responded to their presence. Every surface was smooth and seamless, as if the entire ship had been grown rather than built. Commander Thexanel led them through passages that branched and merged in patterns that would have been impossible in a human-designed vessel. The artificial gravity shifted subtly as they moved, always keeping them oriented toward what felt like down, regardless of which direction they were actually traveling. The radiance of truth represents the pinnacle of hegemony shipbuilding technology, Thexanael explained as they walked. It incorporates materials science advances that your species will not achieve for centuries. The ship's bioneural processing systems can perform calculations that would require entire human computer installations. Sarah whistled softly as she looked around. It's incredible, Chief. I'm not even sure how to process what I'm seeing. Marcus nodded, but his attention was focused on details that the others seemed to miss. While the ship's design was undeniably impressive, his engineering instincts were cataloging the subtle signs that told him about the vessel's actual functionality. The barely perceptible vibration in the deck plates that suggested power distribution irregularities. The faint electromagnetic interference he could feel through his tools. The way certain wall panels showed microscopic stress fractures where they interfaced with other systems. They arrived at what Thexanael identified as the primary sensor control center. The room opened up into a space that seemed impossibly large given the ship's external dimensions. Holographic displays floated throughout the area, showing real-time data streams from hundreds of different sensors. In the center, a complex array of crystalline structures pulsed with the same organic light as the walls. This is the heart of our sensor array, Thexanael said with obvious pride. It can detect and analyze quantum fluctuations across 14 different dimensional planes. The sensitivity is so precise that we can identify individual molecular compositions from distances measured in light years. 3 hegemony technicians were already present, working at control interfaces that looked more like musical instruments than engineering equipment. Their movements were fluid and precise as they manipulated the holographic controls, but Marcus could see frustration in their body language. The problem manifests as intermittent power fluctuations that disrupt sensor calibration, explained Senior Technician Veldar, a Clixardi whose 4 manipulator arms moved in complex patterns as he spoke. The fluctuations occur in irregular patterns that our diagnostic systems cannot predict or replicate. Marcus set down his toolkit and walked slowly around the sensor array. He didn't touch anything, but his trained eyes were absorbing every detail of the system's construction. After several minutes of silent observation, he pulled out a device that looked primitive compared to the sophisticated hegemony equipment surrounding it. "What is that?" asked one of the Zenthri technicians, her voice carrying barely concealed disdain. "Electromagnetic field detector," Marcus replied, watching the readings on his device. "Human technology, about 15 years old. Nothing fancy, but it tells me things your systems might miss." He moved systematically around the room, taking readings at different points. Sarah followed behind him, making notes on her tablet, and occasionally asking questions that sounded cryptic to the alien observers but clearly made sense to Marcus. "Chief, you're getting the resonance pattern again near the tertiary coupling." "I see it. Same frequency as the power distribution node back in the docking bay, but phase shifted about 30 degrees. That would explain the interference cascade if the shielding is compromised." Commander Thexanael watched this exchange with growing impatience. "Human, we do not have time for your primitive diagnostic procedures. Our systems have already analyzed every electromagnetic signature in this room." Marcus paused in his work and looked at the commander. "Your systems analyzed what they were designed to detect. Sometimes the problem is something they weren't designed to look for." He returned to his methodical examination, but now he was focusing on areas that the hegemony technicians had clearly dismissed as irrelevant. Behind panels, inside junction boxes, and along cable runs that were supposed to be purely mechanical. After 20 minutes, Marcus stopped at a wall panel that looked identical to dozens of others throughout the room. He placed his hand flat against the surface and closed his eyes for a moment, as if listening to something the others couldn't hear. "Sarah, hand me the resonance detector and the harmonic analyzer." She passed him two more devices that looked equally primitive to alien eyes. Marcus took readings, compared them to his earlier data, and then did something that made every hegemony technician in the room step back in alarm. He knocked on the wall panel with his knuckles. "Human." Senior technician Veldar's voice rose in dismay. "That panel interfaces with critical ship systems. Your primitive mechanical interaction could cause catastrophic damage." Marcus ignored the protest and knocked again, this time in a different pattern. He listened carefully to the sound, then moved to an adjacent panel and repeated the process. "Fascinating," he murmured to Sarah. "The acoustic signatures are completely different, even though these panels should be functionally identical." "What does that tell us?" she asked. "That something is interfering with the harmonics inside the wall. Something that's not supposed to be there." Commander Thexanael stepped forward, his four arms crossed in a gesture that clearly indicated skepticism. "Human, you're suggesting that our advanced diagnostic systems failed to detect a foreign object inside our ship's structure?" "Not exactly," Marcus replied. He was now using a small device to trace along the edges of the suspect panel. "I'm suggesting that your diagnostic systems detected exactly what they were programmed to detect. But sometimes problems come from interactions between systems that individually work perfectly." He found what he was looking for near the bottom corner of the panel, a barely visible access port, designed to be opened only with specialized hegemony tools. But instead of using the proper equipment, Marcus reached into his toolkit and pulled out what looked like a modified screwdriver. "What are you doing?" Veldar demanded. "That access port requires authorization codes and proper safety protocols." Marcus paused with his improvised tool halfway to the panel. "Commander Thexanael, you gave me unrestricted access to solve this problem. Are you withdrawing that authorization?" The challenge was subtle but unmistakable. Thexanael had made his conditions clear in front of witnesses from multiple species. To back down now would be seen as either cowardice or acknowledgement that he wasn't confident in his own ship's superiority. "Proceed, human. But if your primitive methods cause damage to our systems, the diplomatic consequences will be severe." Marcus nodded and opened the access port. Inside was a maze of crystalline circuits and organic-looking conduits that pulsed with the ship's characteristic living light. But, as Marcus had suspected, there was something else present that didn't belong. "Sarah, take a look at this. Tell me what you see." She leaned in close, studying the revealed systems with the intense focus of someone who had spent years learning to spot anomalies. After a moment, she pointed to a section where two different types of conduits intersected. "Chief, is that what I think it is?" "Afraid so." Classic resonance cascade failure. The bioneural conduits are interfacing with the quantum field generators through an intermediate coupling that wasn't designed to handle the harmonic frequencies. The hegemony technicians gathered around to look at what the humans had discovered. What they saw challenged everything they thought they knew about their own technology. The ship's systems had evolved. Over months of operation, the bioneural networks had grown new connections to optimize performance. This was exactly what they were designed to do, and normally it worked flawlessly. But in this case, the new connections had created an unintended interface between the sensor array and the ship's power distribution system. The interface itself worked perfectly, which was why the ship's diagnostic systems had never identified it as a problem. But the bioneural networks and the quantum field generators operated on slightly different frequencies. When they interfaced directly, they created the harmonic resonance that was causing the power fluctuations. Impossible brevet de Velta. Our design protocols specifically prevent unauthorized system interfaces. Your design protocols prevent unauthorized interfaces between systems that were known when the ship was built, Marcus corrected gently. But you can't prevent interfaces that develop naturally if your bioneural systems are sophisticated enough to grow new connections. The implications were staggering. The hegemony had built ships so advanced that they could literally evolve beyond their original specifications. It was a triumph of technology that surpassed anything humanity had imagined possible. But it also meant that their diagnostic systems, no matter how sophisticated, could be surprised by their own ships. Commander Thexanael stared at the revealed interface for several long moments. When he spoke, his voice carried a mixture of admiration and bewilderment. "How did you know to look for something that shouldn't exist?" Marcus began carefully photographing the interface with a simple digital camera that looked absurdly primitive compared to the hegemony's holographic recording systems. "Because I've seen it before. Not exactly this, but the same kind of problem. When you design systems that can adapt and grow, sometimes they adapt in ways you don't expect. Human systems do it too, just not as elegantly as yours." "You have experience with bioneural networks?" asked one of the Zenthri technicians, her tone shifting from condescension to genuine curiosity. "Not bioneural, no, but adaptive systems? Yeah, every piece of human technology adapts over time. Sometimes it's just wear patterns that change performance characteristics. Sometimes it's software that learns new behaviors. Sometimes it's purely mechanical systems that develop new stress patterns as they age." Sarah was taking her own notes, but she looked up to add, "The chief always says that every machine has a personality that develops over time. You have to understand the personality to understand the problems. Mechanical personality is a primitive anthropomorphic projection," Veldar said automatically. But his tone suggested he was questioning his own words even as he spoke them. Marcus shrugged. "Maybe, but it works. Your ship developed a new personality when the bioneural networks evolved. The new personality includes behaviors that interfere with the sensor systems. He was now using a different tool to measure the exact frequencies of the harmonic resonance. The readings he was getting clearly excited him, because Sarah could see the expression on his face that she had learned to associate with breakthrough moments. "Chief, those frequency patterns look familiar." "They should. They're identical to the resonance cascade we fixed on Luna Station 3 years ago. Different technology, completely different cause, but the same underlying physics." This was the moment when everything changed. Marcus looked up from his instruments and faced the assembled hegemony technicians with the quiet confidence of someone who had just solved an impossible problem. "I can fix this. It'll take about 2 hours, and I'll need to modify 3 interface points throughout the ship. The modifications will be permanent, but they won't affect any other ship systems." "Wait," Commander Thexanel said slowly. "You understand our bioneural technology well enough to modify it safely?" "Not your bioneural technology specifically," Marcus replied. but I understand resonance cascades. Physics is physics, regardless of how sophisticated your technology is. The same principles that govern quantum harmonics in human systems apply to hegemony systems. He gestured toward the revealed interface. Your bioneural networks created this connection because it improves efficiency. The improvement is real and significant, but the resonance pattern it creates interferes with your sensor calibration. I can install harmonic buffers that will preserve the efficiency improvement while eliminating the interference. The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Marcus was claiming that he could not only fix the problem, but actually improve on hegemony engineering using modified human technology. It was either an incredible demonstration of human capability or an arrogant overreach that would end in disaster. Senior Technician Veldar was the first to speak. The harmonic buffers you describe do not exist in our technology base. No, Marcus agreed, but I can build them using principles we developed for dealing with similar problems in human systems. They'll be crude by your standards, but they'll work. Commander Thexanel looked around the sensor control room, taking in the faces of his technicians and the humans who had just challenged everything they thought they knew about galactic technology hierarchies. Proceed, human. Show us these harmonic buffers. As Marcus and Sarah began unpacking additional equipment from their toolkit, word of what was happening spread throughout the ship. Within minutes, the sensor control room was crowded with hegemony crew members who had found reasons to observe the proceedings. But the real audience was extending far beyond the radiance of truth. Throughout Nexus Station, representatives from every major galactic species were following the events through official and unofficial channels. The challenge between Commander Thexanel and Chief Mechanic Shun had become the focus of intense attention throughout the diplomatic community. In her position as a diplomatic observer, Zara found herself fielding communications from human colonies throughout known space. Everyone wanted to know if the rumors were true. Had a human mechanic really been given unrestricted access to cutting-edge hegemony technology? And, more importantly, did he actually have a plan to fix a problem that had stumped the hegemony's best engineers? The next few hours would determine not just the outcome of a technical challenge, but humanity's entire future relationship with the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Marcus had worked in zero-gravity, underwater and toxic atmospheres, and during combat operations, but he had never worked under the kind of pressure he felt now. Every movement was being observed by some of the most advanced minds in the galaxy, all of whom were convinced that human technology was primitive at best. The harmonic buffers he needed to create would require combining human engineering principles with hegemony technology in ways that had never been attempted. Worse, he would have to do it while maintaining the ship's operational status and avoiding any damage to systems that represented centuries of advanced development. Sarah had quietly established a work area near the main sensor array, laying out tools and components in the organized chaos that had sparked this entire confrontation. But now Marcus could see the method in what appeared to be madness to alien eyes. Every tool was positioned for optimal efficiency during the complex installation process they were about to undertake. "Chief," Sarah said quietly, "I've run the calculations 3 times. The frequency modulation requirements are going to push our equipment to the absolute limits." Marcus nodded, studying the readings on his tablet. The bioneural interface was more sophisticated than anything he had encountered, but the underlying physics remained consistent with human understanding. The resonance cascade was creating harmonic interference at frequencies that could be dampened using modified human technology. We'll start with the primary interface point and work our way through the secondary systems, he decided. If the first installation works as predicted, the others should be straightforward. Commander Thexanael had positioned himself where he could observe every detail of the human work process. His 4 arms remained crossed, but Marcus noticed that his stance had shifted from dismissive skepticism to something approaching professional interest. "Human, before you begin making irreversible modifications to our systems, explain exactly what these harmonic buffers are supposed to accomplish." Marcus set down his tools and face the commander directly. After 3 decades of explaining complex engineering concepts to non-engineers, he had learned the importance of making his explanations accessible without being condescending. Your bioneural networks are incredibly sophisticated. They've grown new connections that improve overall ship efficiency by about 12%. That's an impressive achievement by any standard. But the new connections created an unintended interface between your sensor systems and your power distribution network. He gestured toward the revealed interface where organic-looking conduits intersected with crystalline quantum field generators. The bioneural networks operate on variable frequencies that adapt to optimize performance. The quantum field generators operate on fixed frequencies determined by their crystalline matrix structure. When they interface directly, they create harmonic resonance patterns that interfere with sensor calibration. Senior Technician Veldar leaned forward with obvious interest, and your harmonic buffers will eliminate this interference. Not eliminate, Marcus corrected. Redirect. The resonance patterns contain useful information about system performance. Instead of letting them interfere randomly with the sensors, the buffers will channel them into controlled feedback loops that actually improve both power distribution and sensor accuracy. The explanation caused a stir among the hegemony technicians. What Marcus was describing wasn't just a fix for the immediate problem. It was an enhancement that would make their already advanced systems even more effective. Impossible, breathed one of the Zenthri engineers. You cannot improve hegemony system efficiency using primitive human technology. Marcus smiled with the quiet confidence of someone who had heard similar statements countless times before. Maybe not, but I can redirect harmonic resonance patterns using principles that humans have been refining for over a century. Whether that counts as improvement or just optimization depends on your perspective. He began the installation process by carefully removing a section of crystalline matrix from the quantum field generator. The material was unlike anything in human technology, but its function was similar to components Marcus had worked with many times. It stored and manipulated quantum field fluctuations in patterns that could be modified with the right tools. The first harmonic buffer was a hybrid device that combined human harmonic dampening technology with modified hegemony connectors. It looked crude compared to the elegant crystalline structures around it, but Marcus had designed it to interface seamlessly with the ship's existing systems. As he carefully installed the buffer at the primary interface point, the ship's diagnostic systems immediately began registering changes. Holographic displays throughout the sensor control room showed real-time data streams that reflected the new harmonic patterns. The resonance cascade is stabilizing, reported Veldar, his voice carrying undisguised amazement. Power fluctuations have decreased by 60% in the affected systems. But Marcus wasn't finished. The second harmonic buffer required installation in a much more challenging location deep within the ship's power distribution network. Getting to it would require crawling through maintenance passages that were barely large enough for human bodies and definitely not designed for the larger hegemony physiques. I'll need to access the secondary power coupling through the maintenance crawlway, Marcus explained. According to your schematics, it's about a 20-meter crawl through some fairly tight spaces. Commander Thexanel looked dubious. That passage was designed for automated maintenance drones, not biological entities. Are you certain you can maneuver effectively in such a confined space? Humans are pretty good at getting into tight spaces, Sarah said with a grin. It's one of our more useful primitive traits. The maintenance crawlway was indeed cramped, but Marcus had worked in worse conditions. As he made his way through the passage, dragging his tools behind him, he was struck by the elegant efficiency of hegemony design. Every surface served multiple functions, and every component was positioned for optimal performance rather than easy maintenance access. When he reached the secondary power coupling, he understood why the hegemony's automated drones had been unable to identify the problem. The bioneural interface here was even more subtle than the primary connection. The networks had grown new pathways that followed quantum field gradients through the ship's structure, creating connections that were virtually invisible to standard diagnostic equipment. But Marcus could hear the harmonic resonance clearly. It manifested as a barely audible humming that fluctuated in patterns that matched his earlier recordings. The second harmonic buffer would need to be calibrated to complement the first installation while accounting for the unique characteristics of this location. Working in a cramped space with limited visibility, Marcus carefully installed the second buffer. The process required precise frequency matching to ensure that the two buffers would work together to create stable harmonic patterns throughout the affected systems. As the second installation came online, the changes throughout the ship were immediate and dramatic. Power efficiency indicators showed improvements that exceeded Marcus's most optimistic projections. The sensor systems began operating with a precision that surprised even their hegemony operators. "This is remarkable," Veldar announced as Marcus emerged from the crawlway. "System efficiency has improved by 18% overall. Sensor accuracy has increased by 23%. And power distribution stability is now better than original specification parameters." The third and final installation point was located in the ship's primary sensor array itself. This would be the most challenging modification because it required working directly with the quantum field manipulation systems that were responsible for the vessel's incredible sensor capabilities. Marcus approached this installation with particular care. Unlike the previous two buffers, which had been designed to manage harmonic resonance between existing systems, this one would need to integrate directly with the sensor array's quantum field generators. The installation required him to recalibrate the field generator's resonance patterns while they remained operational. It was the engineering equivalent of performing surgery on a beating heart, and any mistake could damage systems that humanity wouldn't be able to replace or repair. As he worked, Marcus was acutely aware of the absolute silence that had fallen over the sensor control room. Every hegemony technician was watching the diagnostic displays that showed real-time changes in the quantum field patterns. The modifications he was making were pushing the sensors beyond their original design parameters into completely uncharted territory. "Sarah, what are you seeing on the harmonic analysis?" "Perfect coherence across all frequency ranges, Chief. The three buffers are creating a stable interference pattern that's actually amplifying the sensor's quantum sensitivity." "Good. That means the field generators are resonating in phase with the bioneural networks instead of fighting them." The final calibration adjustments required Marcus to fine-tune the quantum field patterns while monitoring their effects on the ship's bioneural systems. It was incredibly delicate work that demanded the kind of intuitive understanding of complex interactions that came from decades of experience with adaptive technologies. When he made the last adjustment and stepped back from the sensor array, the results were immediately apparent to everyone in the room. The holographic displays showed quantum field patterns of unprecedented clarity and precision. The sensors were now capable of detecting and analyzing phenomena that had previously been beyond their reach. Commander Thexanel studied the readouts for several long moments before speaking. "Human, what you have accomplished should be impossible. Our most advanced engineers have been optimizing these systems for decades. How have you achieved improvements that our technology could not?" Marcus wiped his hands on his rag and looked around the sensor control room. What he saw was some of the most impressive technology he had ever encountered, now operating at levels that exceeded even its creators' expectations. "Commander, your engineers optimized these systems perfectly for their intended parameters. But you gave the bioneural networks the ability to grow beyond those parameters. When they evolved new capabilities, your optimization algorithms couldn't adapt because they were still working within the original design constraints." He gestured toward his primitive-looking tools. "Human technology isn't as sophisticated as yours, but it's designed to work with systems that adapt and change over time. We've learned to expect the unexpected because our machines have always had to work in unpredictable environments." Sarah was running final diagnostic checks on the completed installation. "All three harmonic buffers are operating within normal parameters. System efficiency is stable at 17% above original specifications. The bioneural networks are showing healthy growth patterns that should maintain these improvements indefinitely. The implications of what had just happened were staggering. Marcus hadn't just fixed the hegemony ship. He had demonstrated that human engineering principles could enhance the galaxy's most advanced technology. The paradigm that placed humans at the bottom of the galactic technology hierarchy had been fundamentally challenged. As were the successful repairs spread throughout Nexus Station, representatives from species throughout the galaxy began requesting detailed reports on human engineering capabilities. The simple confrontation between a mechanic and a pilot had evolved into a galaxy-changing demonstration of human potential. But Marcus remained focused on the practical details that always occupied his attention after completing a complex repair. "Commander, I need to provide you with maintenance specifications for the harmonic buffers. They're designed to be largely self-maintaining, but they'll need periodic recalibration to account for continued bioneural network evolution." As he prepared the documentation that would allow hegemony engineers to maintain his modifications, Marcus was already thinking about the broader implications of what they had learned. If human engineering principles could enhance hegemony technology, what could be accomplished through formal collaboration between species? The galaxy was about to find out. The return journey through the radiance of truth felt completely different from their arrival. Where before the ship's corridors had seemed like an alien maze designed to intimidate visitors, now they felt like the arteries of a living system that Marcus had come to understand intimately. The soft pulsing of the bioneural networks now carried meaning for him, telling the story of a ship that was continuously evolving and adapting. Commander Thexanel walked beside Marcus with an expression that had shifted from skepticism to something approaching reverence. Behind them, Senior Technician Veldar was deep in conversation with Sarah about the theoretical implications of harmonic buffer technology. "Human," Thexanel said as they approached the ship's exit, "I must admit that my assumptions about your species' capabilities were incomplete." Marcus smiled. "Commander, 3 hours ago, I would have said the same thing about hegemony technology. I've never worked with systems that could literally evolve new capabilities. It's incredibly impressive. But you understood how to work with evolutionary systems despite never encountering our specific technology. Because evolution follows patterns, regardless of the specific technology involved. Your bioneural networks grew new connections for the same reason that human adaptive systems develop new behaviors. They were trying to optimize performance within environmental constraints." As they stepped back onto the station's docking bay, Marcus was surprised to discover that word of their success had spread far beyond the immediate area. The docking bay was crowded with representatives from dozens of different species, all of whom seemed to be waiting for their return. Captain Zara Voss pushed through the crowd to reach them first. Her expression mixed relief with barely contained excitement. "Marcus, please tell me the reports I'm hearing are accurate. Did you really enhance hegemony sensor capabilities using human technology?" "We solved the problem they were having with power fluctuations," Marcus replied carefully. "The enhancements were a byproduct of eliminating the harmonic interference." But Commander Thexanel was not inclined toward diplomatic understatement. He raised all 4 of his arms to command attention from the assembled crowd. "Citizens of the galaxy," his voice boomed across the docking bay, "today we have witnessed something unprecedented. Chief Mechanic Chun has not only solved a problem that challenged our finest engineers, but has enhanced our most advanced systems using principles that we had dismissed as primitive." The reaction was immediate and intense. Representatives from species throughout the galaxy pressed forward, asking questions and demanding explanations. But Marcus noticed something interesting in their expressions. Along with the curiosity and amazement, there was something else that he had never seen directed toward humans before. Respect. Dr. Ithalum Morvain, the chief science representative from the Crystalline Consortium, approached with her characteristic geometric precision. Her crystalline body chimed softly as she moved, creating harmonics that reflected her emotional state. Chief Mechanic Chun, the consortium would be honored to discuss collaborative research opportunities. Your harmonic buffer technology suggests engineering principles that could revolutionize quantum field manipulation across multiple applications. Before Marcus could respond, High Engineer Kelvin from the Valerian Trade Federation had stepped forward with his own proposal. The Federation has been struggling with adaptive system optimization in our biomechanical shipyards. We would like to offer a formal consulting contract to apply human engineering principles to our production challenges. Within minutes, Marcus found himself surrounded by offers from some of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Species that had barely acknowledged human existence were now competing for access to human expertise. Sarah leaned close to Marcus and whispered, "Chief, I think we might have accidentally changed everything." But the most significant reaction came from an unexpected source. Ambassador Threndok of the Voidwalkers, a species so advanced and reclusive that they rarely communicated with other galactic civilizations, approached through the crowd with movements that seemed to bend space around them. Human engineer, Threndok's voice resonated with harmonics that bypassed normal hearing and spoke directly to consciousness. The Voidwalkers extend an invitation to visit our research facilities. We have encountered technological evolution patterns that may benefit from your species' unique perspective. The crowd fell silent. The Voidwalkers were legends among galactic species, rumored to possess technology that manipulated the fundamental structure of reality itself. An invitation to their research facilities was unprecedented for any species, let alone one as recently contacted as humanity. Marcus looked at Ambassador Threndok with the same calm professionalism he had shown throughout the day's events. "Ambassador, I'm honored by the invitation, but I should mention that I'm just one human engineer. My species has thousands of others with different specialties and perspectives." "Yes," Threndok replied, and something in the harmonic patterns of their voice suggested deep satisfaction. "This is precisely why the invitation extends to your entire species." Captain Zara Voss realized that the diplomatic landscape had just shifted in ways that would reshape humanity's relationship with the entire galaxy. What had begun as a simple maintenance dispute had evolved into the most significant advancement in human galactic standing since first contact. But even as the crowd of alien representatives continued to grow around Marcus, he remained focused on the practical concerns that had always driven his approach to engineering. "Commander Thexanel," Marcus said, turning back to the hegemony officer, "I still need to provide your technical staff with complete documentation for the harmonic buffer systems. The installation manuals will need to be translated into hegemony technical protocols, and your engineers should understand the maintenance requirements." Thexanel's expression showed something approaching amusement. "Human, you have just received invitations from the most advanced species in the galaxy, and you are concerned about maintenance documentation? The technology only works if it's properly maintained," Marcus replied seriously. "Everything else is just politics." Sarah grinned at the comment. After years of working with Marcus, she had learned that his ability to focus on practical details was exactly what made him so effective at solving impossible problems. While others got distracted by the implications and significance of what they were doing, Marcus remained focused on making sure it actually worked. Over the next several hours, as representatives from throughout the galaxy continued to arrive on Nexus Station, the magnitude of what had happened became clear. The successful enhancement of hegemony technology using human engineering principles had shattered every assumption about humanity's place in galactic civilization. Species that had viewed humans as useful but limited were now recognizing them as essential partners in technological development. The Crystalline Consortium offered to share quantum manipulation techniques that they had never revealed to other species. The Valerian Federation proposed joint research projects that would combine their biomechanical expertise with human adaptive system design. Even the hegemony, whose technological superiority had been the foundation of their galactic influence, was eager to establish formal collaboration agreements with humanity. But The most significant change was more subtle and more profound than any specific technological collaboration. Throughout the galaxy, the perception of humanity had fundamentally shifted. Where once they had been seen as clever but primitive newcomers, they were now recognized as a species with unique capabilities that could benefit everyone. As Captain Zaravas worked through the evening to manage the flood of diplomatic communications from human colonies throughout known space, she realized that humanity's future among the stars had been transformed in a single day. The negotiations she had come to Nexus Station to conduct were suddenly irrelevant. Instead of hoping for minor improvements in humanity's galactic standing, she was now managing offers of partnership from civilizations that possessed technology beyond human imagination. But perhaps the most important change was taking place in a small corner of the docking bay, where Marcus and Sarah were quietly packing their tools after completing their documentation work. "Chief," Sarah said as she secured the last of their equipment, "do you realize what we've started here?" Marcus looked around the docking bay, which was still crowded with alien representatives eager to discuss collaboration opportunities with humanity. His expression showed the satisfaction of someone who had solved an interesting technical problem, but no particular awareness of its broader significance. "We fixed a ship that wasn't working properly," he replied. "Everything else is just people getting excited about the implications. And those implications might change the entire galaxy." Marcus shrugged and picked up his toolkit. "Maybe, but tomorrow there will be other ships that aren't working properly, and they'll still need to be fixed. Technology only matters if it helps solve real problems for real people." As they walked toward their own ship, Marcus was already thinking about the next challenge. Ambassador Thrindok had mentioned technological evolution patterns that the Void Walkers were struggling to understand. The Crystalline Consortium had described quantum field manipulation problems that were limiting their research capabilities. The Valerian Federation needed help optimizing biomechanical systems that were adapting in unexpected ways. For the first time in galactic history, the most advanced civilizations in known space were looking to humanity not just for assistance, but for leadership in solving their most challenging technological problems. The galaxy was about to discover what humans could accomplish when they were no longer limited by others' assumptions about their capabilities. And at the center of that discovery would be the same practical approach that Marcus brought to every engineering challenge. Understand the problem, apply the right principles, and make sure the solution actually works. 3 months later, as the first joint research stations began operations throughout human space, and as Voidwalker technology started incorporating human adaptive system principles, and as the hegemony commissioned human engineers to enhance their entire fleet, Marcus Chun was back on Earth, working in the same cluttered workshop where he had learned his profession. The workshop looked exactly the same as it had before he became the most famous engineer in galactic history. Tools lay scattered in patterns that made perfect sense to Marcus but appeared chaotic to visitors. Half-finished projects occupied every available surface. The coffee maker that Sarah had insisted was essential equipment still occupied its place of honor next to the diagnostic computers. But now the projects included prototypes that combined crystalline quantum manipulation technology with human adaptive system design. The diagnostic computers ran algorithms that incorporated Void Walker reality manipulation principles. And the coffee maker had been enhanced with hegemony bioneural optimization technology that ensured perfect brewing parameters every time. When young engineers visited to learn from the human who had changed the galaxy, they often expected to find someone who had been transformed by his experience with advanced alien technology. Instead, they found Marcus Chun doing exactly what he had always done, solving problems, one tool at a time, with the quiet confidence of someone who knew that every impossible challenge was just another Tuesday. The galaxy had learned why you never underestimate the species that sees every problem as fixable and every limitation as temporary. And Marcus Chun continued to prove every single day that the most dangerous thing in the universe isn't the biggest weapon or the fastest ship. It's underestimating humans.